Karen said, "You can't do that," to Judge Judy. What happened next became the most viral courtroom moment of the decade. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why even seasoned bailiffs couldn't keep a straight face. But here's what nobody tells you about this case. Karen didn't just lose. She walked into that courtroom thinking she had an ace up her sleeve, a secret weapon that would guarantee her victory. She was so confident that she actually smirked at the defendant before the proceedings even began. What she didn't know was that Judge Judy had already seen her so-called evidence, and what the judge discovered buried in those documents would expose a lie so brazen, so calculated, that it would leave the entire courtroom in stunned silence. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. The moment Karen pushed through the courtroom doors, you could feel the energy shift. She wasn't walking. She was marching, her heels clicking against the polished floor with the rhythm of someone who believed they owned the room. In her right hand, she clutched a thick manila folder, the edges already worn from her constant handling, as if she'd been rehearsing this moment for weeks. Her left hand, balled into a fist at her side, jaws set, eyes locked straight ahead with the kind of tunnel vision that screamed entitlement. She wore a blazer that looked freshly pressed, her hair styled to perfection, and an expression that said she'd already written her victory speech. The courtroom itself buzzed with that peculiar energy that only a Judge Judy taping can produce. The audience sat shoulder to shoulder, some leaning forward in anticipation, others whispering predictions to their neighbors. The bailiff stood near the bench, arms crossed, wearing that knowing expression that comes from witnessing hundreds of cases. He'd seen Karen's before, many of them, and that slight shake of his head as Karen entered told you everything you needed to know. This was going to be good. Across the aisle sat the defendant, a middle-aged man named Robert, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. His posture was slumped not from guilt but from exhaustion. The exhaustion of dealing with Karen for the past 8 months. The exhaustion of being dragged into court over what he believed was absolute nonsense. He had his own folder, noticeably thinner, resting on his lap. No dramatic flair, no power poses, just a man who wanted this nightmare to end. And then there was Judge Judy, seated behind her iconic bench, reading glasses perched on her nose, flipping through documents with the casual efficiency of someone who'd done this 10,000 times. She didn't look up when Karen entered, didn't acknowledge the theatrical entrance. She just kept reading, her expression unreadable, one finger tapping slowly against the wood of her bench. But if you looked closely, if you really paid attention, you could see the slightest tightening around her eyes. She was reading something interesting, something that didn't match up. Karen took her position at the plaintiff's podium, setting her folder down with deliberate force, the sound echoing through the quiet courtroom. She adjusted her blazer, cleared her throat, and shot one more confident glance at Robert. This was her moment, her chance to expose the injustice she'd suffered. The judge would see reason. The judge would understand. The judge would rule in her favor because Karen was always right. She had to be. Judge Judy finally looked up, removing her glasses with practiced precision, and fixed Karen with that penetrating stare that has made defendants squirm for decades. The courtroom held its breath. The camera zoomed in. Even the audience seemed to lean forward as one collective organism, sensing that whatever was about to happen would be worth every second. "State your case," Judge Judy said, her voice carrying that trademark blend of authority and barely concealed impatience. It wasn't a request, it was a command. Karen straightened her spine, placed both hands on the podium, and launched into her prepared speech with the confidence of a trial lawyer delivering a closing argument. "Your Honor, I'm here today because my neighbor Robert has been violating our HOA agreement for 8 months. 8 months! He built a fence that extends 6 inches onto my property line, and when I confronted him about it, do you know what he said? He said it's been there for 2 years and I never complained before. But that's not the point. The point is it's on my property, my land, and according to our HOA bylaws you can't do that." There it was, the phrase that would become infamous. "You can't do that." Karen delivered it with such conviction, such absolute certainty, that a few audience members actually nodded along. On the surface, it sounded reasonable. Property lines are property lines, right? Rules are rules, but Judge Judy's expression didn't change. She didn't nod. She didn't agree. She simply picked up the document she'd been reading before Karen entered, held it up slightly, and asked in a tone that made the temperature in the room drop 5 degrees. "Mrs. Patterson, before we continue, I have a question about this survey report you submitted, the one you claim proves the fence is on your property." Karen's confidence flickered. Just for a second. Just long enough for the cameras to catch the micro-expression of uncertainty that flashed across her face before she forced the smile back into place. Yes, Your Honor. That survey clearly shows— I'll tell you what it shows, Judge Judy interrupted, and the courtroom went dead silent. It shows a survey conducted 3 weeks ago. But what's interesting is this other document I have here, the original property survey from when both of you purchased your homes 2 years ago. The same survey that shows this fence was built precisely on the correct property line. Robert's property line. The courtroom collectively inhaled. Karen's face went from confident to confused to something resembling panic in the span of 3 seconds. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. But even more interesting, Judge Judy continued, her voice cutting through the tension like a scalpel, is this email chain I have between you and Robert from 18 months ago, where you explicitly acknowledged the fence was on his property and thanked him for making it look nice because it improved both your home values. The folder in Karen's hands began to tremble. The audience erupted in whispered gasps. Robert sat up straighter, hope flickering in his eyes for the first time, and Judge Judy leaned back in her chair, removed her glasses, and fixed Karen with a look that said everything. I know exactly what you tried to do here, and you picked the wrong courtroom. So let me ask you again, Mrs. Patterson, Judge Judy said, her words slow and deliberate, each syllable weighted with the promise of what was coming. Do you want to revise your statement? Or do you want to continue telling me that you can't remember writing that email? If you want to see Karen try to talk her way out of getting caught in a lie on national television, you need to hit that subscribe button right now, because what Judge Judy does next is absolutely legendary. This case is about to go completely off the rails, and you won't believe how badly Karen makes it worse for herself. Don't miss a second. Karen's face had gone from courtroom-ready confidence to the pale shade of someone who just realized they walked into a trap they set for themselves. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, her brain visibly scrambling to construct a response that wouldn't sound like a complete admission of guilt. The folder she'd been clutching like a shield now felt like evidence of her own deception, and her hands moved to smooth down her blazer, a nervous gesture that screamed discomfort. Your Honor, that email was taken out of context, Karen stammered, her voice losing that commanding edge it had just 30 seconds ago. What I meant was— Excuse me, Judge Judy interrupted, holding up one finger in that iconic gesture that has silenced thousands of defendants. Did you or did you not write in that email, and I'm quoting here, Robert, thank you for building such a beautiful fence. It really classes up both our properties, and I appreciate you keeping it on your side of the line. Did you write that? Yes or no? The courtroom was so quiet you could hear the camera operators breathing. Every eye locked on Karen, waiting for her response. The audience members in the front row leaned so far forward they were practically falling out of their seats. Robert, for his part, allowed himself the smallest smile, the kind that said he'd been waiting 8 months for someone to finally hold Karen accountable. Yes, but— Karen tried to continue, but Judge Judy's hand went up again. But nothing. You wrote it. You acknowledged the fence was on his property. You thanked him for it. And now 18 months later you hired a surveyor, got a conveniently different result, and decided to sue your neighbor for 6 inches of land that was never yours to begin with. Judge Judy's voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of absolute authority, each word landing like a gavel strike. Karen's strategy shifted instantly. When caught in a lie, go on the offensive. Your Honor, with all due respect, that fence has decreased my property value, my real estate agent said. I don't care what your real estate agent said, Judge Judy cut in, her patience clearly wearing thinner. I care about facts. I care about documents. I care about the truth. And the truth is, you're standing in my courtroom trying to steal 6 inches of your neighbor's land because you decided you wanted it. That's called fraud, Mrs. Patterson. The word fraud echoed through the courtroom like a thunderclap. Gasps erupted from the audience. One woman actually grabbed her neighbor's arm. Robert's smile grew wider, and Karen's face flushed red, that dangerous combination of embarrassment and rage that comes when someone is publicly exposed. I am not committing fraud. Karen's voice rose, her composure cracking completely. That fence is a nuisance, it blocks my view, and I have every right. You have the right to remain silent, Judge Judy said, her tone ice cold. And I suggest you exercise it before you make this worse. We're just getting started and you're already drowning. Karen did not take Judge Judy's advice. Instead, she did what every Karen does when cornered. She doubled down. Her hands gripped the podium so tight her knuckles turned white, and her voice took on that shrill quality that comes from someone who genuinely believes if they just talk louder, reality will bend to their will. Your Honor, I don't appreciate being called a liar on national television, Karen said, her chin jutting forward defiantly. I have rights. I have documentation. I have witnesses who will testify that this fence has been a problem since day one. Judge Judy tilted her head slightly, like a hawk spotting movement in the grass. Really, witnesses? Mrs. Patterson, you didn't bring any witnesses. There's nobody here but you and the defendant. Karen blinked. Hard. Well, they couldn't make it today, but they submitted written statements. Show them to me. The courtroom held its breath. Karen's hands fumbled with her folder, papers shuffling with increasing desperation. There, I know I put them. My lawyer was supposed to... Her voice trailed off as the horrible realization hit her. She didn't have them. Or they never existed in the first place. Judge Judy leaned forward, her expression a mixture of disbelief and amusement. Let me understand this. You filed a lawsuit. You dragged your neighbor to court. You wasted everyone's time. And you came here without actual evidence? I have evidence, Karen protested, pulling out her new survey report and waving it like a flag. That survey proves you paid someone $300 to tell you what you wanted to hear, Judge Judy interrupted. The original survey, the one conducted by a neutral third party when you both bought your homes, tells the truth. Your survey is garbage. The audience couldn't hold it anymore. Scattered laughter broke out, quickly suppressed but unmistakable. Judge Judy wasn't finished. She reached for another document from her stack, this one with several yellow sticky tabs marking specific pages, the kind of preparation that told you she'd done her homework, and someone was about to get schooled. Karen's eyes followed the paper with growing dread, like watching a predator select which part of you to bite first. Mrs. Patterson, let's talk about your timeline, Judge Judy said, flipping to a marked page. You claim this fence has been bothering you since it was built, that you've complained multiple times, that Robert has been ignoring your concerns for 2 years. Karen nodded eagerly, sensing an opportunity to regain footing. Yes, exactly. He's been completely dismissive of my legitimate concerns about my property rights. Then explain this. Judge Judy held up a printed document. This is a Facebook post from your account, posted 14 months ago. And I quote, "Love my neighborhood. Great neighbors, beautiful fences, couldn't ask for better." You tagged Robert in this post. There's even a photo of you standing next to his fence giving a thumbs up. The courtroom exploded. Audience members gasped, laughed, and whispered furiously to each other. One man in the back row stood up just to get a better look at Karen's reaction. Robert dropped his head into his hands, his shoulders shaking with what might have been laughter or relief or both. Karen's face cycled through every shade of red in the spectrum. I was being polite. You have to understand I didn't want to cause neighborhood drama. So you lied on social media to be polite, but you're telling the truth in my courtroom where you stand to gain financially? Judge Judy's eyebrow arched so high it nearly left her face. Do you hear yourself? It's different. Karen's voice cracked with desperation. The situation changed. The fence started to bother me later. The fence didn't change, Mrs. Patterson. Your bank account did. Judge Judy pulled out yet another document, and Karen visibly flinched. 2 months before you filed this lawsuit, you refinanced your home. The appraisal came in lower than you expected. So you decided if you could expand your property line by 6 inches, maybe claim a few extra square feet, you could bump up your home value. Isn't that right? Karen stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly. She had no answer. Because Judge Judy had just exposed the real reason behind this entire charade, and everyone in that courtroom knew it. That's what I thought, Judge Judy said quietly, leaning back in her chair. Greed makes people do stupid things. Karen's last shred of composure evaporated like water on hot pavement. Her carefully constructed facade of righteousness crumbled. And what emerged was pure, unadulterated desperation, mixed with indignation. She slammed her hand on the podium, the sharp crack echoing through the courtroom like a gunshot, and her voice rose to a pitch that made several audience members wince. This is ridiculous. You're not even listening to me. I have rights as a property owner, and this court is supposed to protect those rights, not mock me in front of millions of people. Karen's face was now a deep crimson, a vein pulsing visibly at her temple. That fence is on my property, regardless of what some old survey says, and I demand. You demand? Judge Judy's voice cut through Karen's tirade like a knife through butter, and the single word carried such force that Karen actually stepped back from the podium. The judge stood up slowly, deliberately, her 5'1" frame somehow commanding the entire room. Let me tell you what you're going to do, Mrs. Patterson. You're going to stand there quietly while I explain to you how the real world works. The courtroom went deathly silent. Even the camera operators seemed to hold their breath. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. The reckoning. The legendary Judge Judy takedown that would be replayed 1,000,000 times across social media. You came into my courtroom with a fraudulent survey. You lied about your neighbor. You contradicted your own written statements and social media posts. You wasted this court's time, your neighbor's time, and most importantly, my time. Judge Judy's words were precise, surgical, each one landing with devastating accuracy. And you know what the worst part is? You actually thought you'd get away with it. You thought you could manufacture evidence, rewrite history, and bully your way to stealing your neighbor's land. Karen tried to interrupt her, but I'm not finished. Judge Judy's hand shot up and Karen's mouth snapped shut like a trap. You know what I've learned in 40 years of practicing law? People like you always think the rules don't apply to them. You think if you yell loud enough, cry hard enough, or act entitled enough, someone will just give you what you want. Well, congratulations, Mrs. Patterson. You picked the wrong courtroom. Judge Judy sat back down, picked up her gavel, and delivered her verdict with the kind of finality that ends careers and creates viral moments. Judgment for the defendant. Not only is your case dismissed, but you're going to pay Robert's legal fees, his time off work, and you're going to write him an apology letter that I will personally review. The fence stays exactly where it is because that's where it belongs. On his property. The gavel came down with a thunderous bang that seemed to shake the entire room. The courtroom erupted. Audience members leaped to their feet, applause mixing with cheers and a few whistles. Robert's face broke into the biggest smile anyone had seen, his relief palpable as he mouthed thank you toward the bench. The bailiff allowed himself a full grin now, no longer bothering to hide his satisfaction. And Karen? She stood motionless, her mouth hanging open in complete shock. If you think that was satisfying, smash that like button because Karen's reaction after the ruling is absolutely priceless. The meltdown continues and you won't want to miss what she says in the hallway. Keep watching. The moment Judge Judy's gavel hit the bench, Karen's shock transformed into something far more volatile. As the bailiff gestured for her to exit the courtroom, she snatched her fraudulent folder off the podium with such force that several papers flew into the air, scattering across the floor like her destroyed credibility. She didn't bother picking them up. Instead, she stormed toward the exit, her heels hammering against the floor with the rage of someone who'd just experienced the public humiliation of a lifetime. The hallway outside the courtroom became ground zero for what can only be described as a complete emotional detonation. Camera crews, knowing gold when they saw it, followed at a respectful distance as Karen paced back and forth, her hands gesturing wildly, her voice carrying down the corridor with that distinctive Karen frequency that makes managers everywhere instinctively reach for their name tags. That judge is biased. Completely biased, Karen announced to anyone within earshot, which happened to be about 30 people including crew members, other litigants, and unfortunate courthouse staff just trying to do their jobs.
She had it out for me from the moment I walked in there.
She didn't let me explain. She didn't listen to my side. A production assistant, microphone in hand, made the brave decision to approach. Mrs. Patterson, Judge Judy presented evidence including your own emails and social media posts that contradicted your claims. How do you respond to that? Karen whirled on him, her eyes blazing. Those were taken out of context. All of them. I was being neighborly when I wrote those things, but that doesn't mean I can't change my mind about my own property. The logic was so twisted it could tie itself in knots, but Karen delivered it with absolute conviction. Meanwhile, Robert emerged from the courtroom with his lawyer, both men wearing expressions of profound relief. When the same production assistant asked for his reaction, Robert simply shook his head in disbelief. I've been dealing with this for 8 months. 8 months of harassment, threats, lawyers' fees, and stress, all because she decided she wanted 6 inches of land that was never hers. Judge Judy saw right through it in under 20 minutes. The contrast couldn't have been starker. Robert, calm and vindicated, heading toward the exit with his head high. Karen, still ranting in the background about judicial corruption and how she was going to appeal, file complaints, and contact the media, apparently forgetting that she was already on television, and the media had just watched her get destroyed by facts and her own evidence. Here's what this case really teaches us, and why millions of people watched this moment over and over, until it became the most shared courtroom clip of the year. This wasn't just about a fence or 6 inches of property line. This was about something far more fundamental to how we live together in society, and why Judge Judy's approach resonates so deeply with people who are exhausted by entitlement. First, the evidence always wins. Karen walked into that courtroom convinced her confidence would outweigh facts. She believed that if she just acted certain enough, spoke assertively enough, and presented herself as the victim convincingly enough, she could override reality itself. But Judge Judy's courtroom operates on a simple principle that too many people forget. Feelings aren't facts, and your version of events doesn't matter if the documentation says otherwise. Karen's own emails, her social media posts, and the original property survey told a story she couldn't talk her way out of. The lesson? Truth doesn't negotiate with your narrative. Second, preparation is everything. Judge Judy didn't just glance at the case file 5 minutes before the cameras rolled. She had done her homework, cross-referenced every claim, and spotted the contradictions before Karen even opened her mouth. That's 40 years of legal expertise cutting through manipulation like a hot knife through butter. Meanwhile, Karen brought attitude and a survey she paid for, thinking that would be enough. It wasn't even close. Third, and perhaps most importantly, accountability still exists. In a world where people increasingly believe they can Karen their way through any situation, where social media echo chambers convince them they're always right, and where the loudest voice often drowns out reason, Judge Judy's courtroom represents something people are desperate for. A place where actions have consequences. Karen tried to steal her neighbor's land through legal manipulation, got caught and faced immediate justice. No do-overs. No sympathy points. Just accountability. The reason this case went viral wasn't just because it was entertaining, though watching Karen's meltdown certainly qualified as premium content. It resonated because people are tired of seeing entitled behavior go unchecked. They're exhausted by those who twist truth to fit their agenda, who weaponize victimhood for personal gain, and who make life miserable for decent people like Robert just trying to live in peace. Judge Judy didn't just rule on a property dispute that day. She reminded us that integrity matters, that documentation beats declaration every single time, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can hear is a simple, definitive no from someone who refuses to be manipulated. If this case reminded you why Judge Judy is the undisputed queen of courtroom justice, do me a favor and subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that notification bell because we break down the most insane, most satisfying moments where entitled people learn that reality doesn't care about their feelings. Drop a comment and tell me your wildest Karen encounter. Whether you've seen one get shut down in real life or if you've got a Judge Judy moment that tops this one. Share this video with someone who needs to see what real accountability looks like. And remember, the next time someone tells you you can't do that, make sure you've actually got the facts on your side. Because somewhere out there, a Judge Judy is waiting to set the record straight. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next breakdown where justice is served cold and entitled people get exactly what they deserve.